welcome back to our channel. Found a rare 1-dime coin that could be worth a fortune. Like and subscribe for more hidden treasure finds. In the quiet hum of the Denver Mint in 1970, coins clattered in endless rhythm, thousands minted by the minute, each stamped with precision. Among them were millions of Roosevelt dimes, the workhorse of American pocket change. This small silver-toned coin, bearing the proud profile of President Franklin D. Roosevelt, had circulated widely since its debut in 1946. It was a familiar face in laundromats, vending machines, and children's piggy banks. The year 1970 was nothing extraordinary for the dime on the surface, but beneath the layers of seemingly uniform production, something elusive stirred, something nearly impossible to detect. At the time, America was deep in the throes of transition. The Vietnam War raged on, Nixon's presidency was a subject of heated debate, and the coinage system had recently seen a major shift. The Coinage Act of 1965 had removed silver from most circulating coins, including the dime. Now made from a clad composition of copper and nickel, the Roosevelt dime still gleamed like its silver predecessor, but its core had fundamentally changed. Most Americans never noticed. But numismatists, those deeply attuned to the subtleties of minting, were paying attention. Among the clatter of coins in 1970, a mistake happened. A strange, almost invisible misstep. Somewhere in the mechanical heartbeat of the minting process, a set of dies, tools responsible for stamping the coin, found themselves misaligned with history. A small number of dimes, no more than a whisper in the total mintage, were struck over previously minted coins from another era. The evidence wasn't loud. It wasn't even immediate. But it was there, waiting. It took years before the story began to take shape in the life of one collector. James Holbrook was not a famous numismatist. He didn't travel the country for rare coin expos. He didn't have glass cases lined with gold doubloons. He was a quiet man, a Vietnam veteran, who found calm in routine and solace in history. On Saturdays, he wandered flea markets with his magnifying glass in hand, examining coins on dusty folding tables under yellow tarps. It was in the fall of 1980 that he picked up a small plastic bag containing a few Roosevelt dimes. The dealer had them labeled as junk silver, even though post-1964 dimes contained no silver at all. James didn't mind. He enjoyed the search. That evening, under his desk lamp, he examined the coins more closely. He wasn't expecting much, perhaps a few dimes with worn dates or subtle die cracks, but then something caught his eye. A strange shadow behind the Liberty inscription. He tilted the coin, the light revealing what appeared to be remnants of another date, 1967, or perhaps 1965. The imprint was faint, like a ghost refusing to leave. He rubbed his thumb across the coin's surface. The date still read 1970. But something beneath it lingered. Puzzled, James compared it to other dimes from the same year. None bore the same odd texture. Under magnification, he saw the faint outline of another Roosevelt head, slightly askew. It was unmistakable. This dime had been struck over another coin entirely. But how? He reached out to a local coin expert who confirmed his suspicions. It was an overstrike. A 1970 Roosevelt dime struck over a 1967 Canadian quarter. It was one of the rarest errors imaginable, an international planchet mix-up. Somehow, during the hectic pace of production, a foreign coin blank had made its way into the U.S. Mint's machinery and been restruck with American dies. James felt a chill. He wasn't holding a simple error, he was holding a mystery. A mistake born of two nations' currencies. For years, the coin sat quietly in his collection, stored in a simple white envelope marked only with 1970 mystery. James would show it occasionally to friends or local collectors, each time receiving the same stunned reaction. Yet its value was still undefined. Without official recognition, without provenance, the coin was a curiosity, fascinating but unquantified. It wasn't until the late 1990s that the numismatic world began to whisper about 1970 Roosevelt dime errors. Word spread of others, different from James' coin, but equally strange. Some were struck on proof planchets, giving the coin an eerie mirror-like finish despite no record of proof dimes from Denver in 1970. Others bore double dates, or phantom inscriptions from previous mintings. What seemed at first like isolated anomalies began to form a constellation. The year 1970 was not ordinary at all. By 2003, the market for error coins had begun to surge. Auction houses noticed a growing interest in dimes from 1970, especially those with trace overstrikes or oddities. A 1970s dime struck over a 1945 Mercury dime fetched $10,000 at a private auction, igniting fresh waves of speculation. Was this just a mechanical mishap, or was there something deeper? James watched as the buzz intensified. He decided, after decades of quiet ownership, to send his dime for grading and authentication. The verdict stunned him. Not only was the coin genuine, it was unique. No other known specimen had been struck over a Canadian quarter, especially not in the Roosevelt dime series. The mix-up between US and Canadian currency, two distinct systems, should have been impossible under standard minting protocol. Yet, there it was. Word spread quickly. Forums lit up. Collectors speculated wildly about how many might exist, though experts agreed such an occurrence would be exceedingly rare. As demand surged, so too did value. In 2006, an anonymous buyer offered James $28,000 for the coin. He declined. It wasn't greed, it was reverence. This wasn't just a dime. It was an error woven through history, through accident and obscurity. He wasn't ready to let go. The most curious aspect wasn't the value, nor the accident. It was what emerged later. An investigative numismatist, fascinated by James' find, began digging through Denver Mint production records from 1970. What he discovered was stranger than anyone had predicted. During the early spring of that year, the Denver Mint had received a shipment of blank planchets intended for internal training use, an odd occurrence in itself. But due to a clerical error, a batch of mixed foreign and domestic coin blanks were temporarily introduced into the production floor. Most were caught. A few were not. One particular shipment came from the Royal Canadian Mint, intended for metallurgical testing. The shipment was supposed to be held in a separate wing, but for a period of 48 hours, the storage documentation had been misfiled. In those 2 days, several Canadian quarter planchets, already bearing partial designs, may have found their way into U.S. striking chambers. The incident was never publicized, likely considered too minor or embarrassing to record officially. But internal memos, obtained decades later, told the story in fragmented lines and faded signatures. James' coin was proof. By 2012, the coin had been displayed at national coin expos, drawing long lines of curious collectors. Children stared wide-eyed at the nearly flawless Roosevelt dime that, upon closer look, bore the faint outlines of another leader entirely, Queen Elizabeth II. A dime with two legacies pressed into one metal body, its value fluctuated wildly as the buzz spread. At one point, a major private collector offered $72,000. Another collector, known for purchasing presidential artifacts, placed a bid of $81,000. Yet James held firm. Not out of stubbornness, but out of a quiet understanding that some things grow in value beyond money. His coin wasn't just rare, it was a time capsule. A symbol of two nations minting mistakes converging into one impossibility. Then, the twist arrived. A second coin surfaced in 2019. Nearly identical. A 1970 Roosevelt dime struck over what appeared to be a 1968 Mexican peso. This time, it was located in Texas, in the possession of a retired railroad worker who had no idea what he was holding. The coin was confirmed genuine by two separate grading services. The odds of two international overstrike errors from the same year, the same denomination, and similar foreign planchets were astronomical. The numismatic world reeled, speculation ran rampant. Was there an undocumented period in 1970 where the Denver Mint received foreign blanks en masse? Or worse, had there been an experimental program, quickly abandoned, to test U.S. dies on foreign metals? Conspiracy theories blossomed, some suggesting Cold War-era sabotage of minting protocols, others believing rogue employees had created the errors intentionally to profit decades later, but no hard evidence emerged. Only whispers and questions. What is known, indisputably, is this: the 1970 Roosevelt dime, once seen as a bland workhorse of American coinage, now holds a place among the most enigmatic pieces in U.S. numismatic history. Its value continues to climb. As of the latest records, estimates for unique overstrikes can reach $100,000 depending on provenance and condition. But the financial worth is only part of the intrigue. For James Holbrook, now in his 80s, the coin remains in his possession. He keeps it in a small walnut box, lined with blue velvet. He rarely shows it anymore. But sometimes, when asked by a curious neighbor or a new generation of collectors, he'll bring it out and let the light hit its face just so the ghost beneath Roosevelt's chin flickers into view. Not all errors are mistakes. Some are messages, unintended, unrepeatable, and waiting to be found by the quiet, persistent eyes of those who know where to look. In the steady cadence of machines and metallic scent of the Philadelphia Mint in 1980, the Roosevelt dime was being pressed in the tens of millions. Each coin, small in size but large in symbolism, carried the familiar left-facing portrait of President Franklin D. Roosevelt, a tribute to a man who led America through the Great Depression and World War II. Since 1946, this design had remained largely unchanged, anchoring itself in the pockets and palms of generations. By 1980, America had entered a different chapter. Inflation was high, the energy crisis was shaking the economy, and political trust was fraying in the aftermath of Watergate and Vietnam. Yet through it all, coins kept coming, reliable, identical, expected. But in one corner of the minting process, an anomaly crept in, silent and unannounced. The dime of 1980 should have been just another product of mass uniformity, struck from copper-nickel-clad planchets with a reeded edge and the phrase, E pluribus unum, engraved into its reverse. Nothing in the official records hinted at any deviation. And yet, something did go wrong, or perhaps, something unusual went unnoticed for years. This wasn't a misalignment visible to the naked eye or a blatant double strike that caught immediate attention. Instead, the error was buried beneath layers of routine, quietly waiting for the right eyes to reveal it. Those eyes belonged to Angela Cortez, a second-generation coin collector from El Paso, Texas. She had grown up watching her father meticulously examine pennies under the light of a gooseneck lamp, each coin a potential treasure, each scratch a clue. Angela didn't share her father's obsession early on, but the bug eventually caught her during a business trip in the spring of 2004. She wandered into a thrift store on the outskirts of Albuquerque and found a wooden display case filled with pocket change from decades past. Among the Eisenhower dollars and Buffalo nickels, she spotted a transparent sleeve holding a small cluster of Roosevelt dimes. The label read, 10 cents each, take your pick. She chuckled, but curiosity tugged at her. She chose 5 and walked out with 50 cents of history. Later that night, in her hotel room, she unfolded her travel magnifier and began inspecting the dimes. The first 4 were nothing unusual, tarnished but ordinary. The 5th, however, was odd. At first glance, it appeared to be a 1980 Roosevelt dime. Standard mint mark. Slightly worn rim. But when she tilted the coin in the light, she noticed something peculiar, a faint circular impression behind Roosevelt's neck, almost like an echo. Intrigued, she brought the lens closer. That's when she saw it. Just beneath the date, 1980, embedded into the lower left quadrant of the coin's field, was what looked like the remnants of another year. Not clear, but not dismissible either. Something was off. Angela carried the coin home and showed it to her father, who immediately noticed more inconsistencies. The edges were reeded unevenly. The rim wasn't uniformly struck. Most telling of all, under a high-powered loop, there appeared to be a trace of lettering, small, curved, and foreign to the dime's normal design. The coin wasn't just misaligned or worn. It had been struck over another coin entirely. The implication sent a thrill through both of them. But what kind of coin was underneath? They submitted it to a third-party grading service. The weight was excruciating, but the results were staggering. The 1980 dime had been struck over a Guatemalan 1 centavo coin, a lightweight aluminum piece of different dimensions and composition that had no business inside the Philadelphia Mint's equipment. The alignment was off by only a few degrees, making the underlying features ghostly and difficult to identify. But they were there. A cross from the centavo's reverse. A partial date from its obverse. Somehow, the foreign blank had found its way into the U.S. production line, receiving an American face over its native identity. The experts were baffled. This type of cross-national error was incredibly rare, and almost never from this time period. Coin experts theorized that during a transitional period between material shipments, a handful of foreign blanks may have been left behind in the loading bays. The Philadelphia Mint was known for processing millions of coins per day, so one rogue blank might easily have passed unnoticed if caught in a feeder chute. But this didn't explain everything. Why a Guatemalan centavo? Why 1980? More digging uncovered a possible link. During the late 1970s and early 1980s, the U.S. Mint had been involved in experimental runs of coins for foreign nations, including countries in Central America. Although not well publicized, internal documentation confirmed that aluminum blanks had been used in test runs for Guatemalan currency between 1979 and 1980. The blanks were supposed to be returned or discarded. Apparently, at least one wasn't. And in the midst of one ordinary day in 1980, that blank was struck with a Roosevelt dime die and quietly released into circulation. The coin Angela found wasn't just rare, it was nearly unprecedented. It defied protocol, logic, and inventory control. It existed in a space between two governments' coinage systems, forged not by intent but by imperfection. And as more collectors learned of its existence, the allure deepened. The numismatic world thrives on mystery, and the 1980 Roosevelt dime overstruck on a foreign planchet quickly became a topic of heated discussion. Forums speculated on how many might exist. Some suggested others were surely lost in circulation, mistaken for pocket change and spent without a second glance. But none came forward. Angela's dime appeared to be unique. For a while, it wasn't even offered for sale. She held on to it, watched it climb in notoriety, and displayed it at select coin expos under secure glass. In 2010, a private buyer offered her $21,000 for the piece. She declined. By 2016, another offer came in, this time, $36,500. Again, she refused. She wasn't waiting for the highest bidder, she was waiting to understand it more. In the meantime, she commissioned a private metallurgical analysis, confirming that the base of the coin was indeed aluminum, matching the exact composition of Guatemalan centavos minted in 1979. Then, a new twist emerged. A second dime from 1980 surfaced, this one struck on a Philippine 5-centavo planchet. It was different in appearance, duller in tone, but bore the same telltale signs: misaligned reading, faint underlying symbols, and a slightly off-center Roosevelt bust. The discovery lent credibility to a growing theory. During the 1980 production period, several foreign planchets had likely been introduced into the U.S. minting process, either as part of experimental minting contracts or due to contamination in shared blank inventories. What began as a singular anomaly now appeared as part of a cluster of undocumented errors. By the early 2020s, the coin story had evolved. It was no longer merely a dime with a mysterious strike. It was a relic from a hidden chapter of minting history, a tangible artifact of a time when communication gaps and production overload allowed the improbable to occur. Collectors and historians alike began treating it with reverence, not just for its rarity, but for what it represented, the delicate balance between precision and chaos within the heart of industrial coin production. Auction houses began reaching out. Angela finally agreed to a formal appraisal in 2022. The verdict? A conservative estimate placed the coin's value between $54,000 and $110,000, depending on market timing and buyer interest. At the time, it was still the only known Roosevelt dime struck on a Guatemalan blank. Its uniqueness had not been surpassed. She has yet to sell it. Today, the coin rests in a climate-controlled vault, accompanied by photographs, authentication papers, and a typed letter recounting its discovery. Angela still attends expos, sometimes carrying a framed print of the dime's magnified surface. People marvel at the coin's subtle complexities: the ghost of another nation beneath Roosevelt's chin, the glint of an aluminum core where copper should be, the way an error so small could tell a story so vast. The 1980 Roosevelt dime, once just another coin in a vending machine, now occupies a rare and elevated position in the world of collectible currency. Not because of what it was supposed to be, but because of what it became by accident. From a 10-cent piece forgotten in time to a six-figure relic of minting mystery, its legacy lives on in the shadows of its strike, the whispers of its overprint, and the silence between what should have happened and what did. In the early days of 1990, as America adjusted to the closing decade of a turbulent century, the Philadelphia Mint buzzed with familiar precision. Coins were being produced in vast numbers, nickels, quarters, and dimes clinking from machines like a rhythmic chorus of industry. The Roosevelt dime, unassuming yet ever-present, continued its silent role in everyday transactions. Since 1946, it had held its place in American currency, depicting President Franklin D. Roosevelt's likeness in a simple, enduring profile. The nation had changed around it, but the dime remained steady, circulating through hands, registers, and change jars. But within the flood of 1990s coinage, something quietly slipped through, something no one was supposed to notice. That year, over 1.1 billion Roosevelt dimes were minted at the Philadelphia facility alone. With such massive output, even the slightest error could become statistically invisible. The vast majority emerged crisp, clean, and ordinary. Yet, deep within the repetition of automated perfection, a flaw took root, an irregularity so subtle, so buried within the ordinary, that it took nearly a decade for anyone to realize it existed at all. Miles Patterson, a high school math teacher from Ohio with a quiet passion for coin collecting, didn't set out to uncover a mystery. Most of his collecting was casual, a hobby passed down from his grandfather. On weekends, he'd visit local estate sales, hoping to stumble upon overlooked gems in dusty cigar boxes. One chilly November afternoon in 1999, he came across a shoebox labeled Old Coins, $5. Inside was an assortment of circulated change from the 1970s through 1990s. Dimes, nickels, and quarters clanked together without ceremony. He purchased the box more out of habit than expectation and brought it home. A few days later, sitting at his dining room table, Miles began sorting through the collection. His attention was half-hearted until one of the dimes caught his eye. It was dated 1990, and at first, nothing seemed off. But when he flipped it under the light, he noticed something strange. The surface appeared layered, almost like it had been struck unevenly. He turned it again. The word Liberty looked slightly blurred, and the outer rim wasn't fully defined. At the base of Roosevelt's neck, there seemed to be more. A whisper of another face, a curve that didn't belong. Curiosity turned to fascination. Under magnification, he saw what looked like faint traces of additional lettering, unfamiliar, misplaced, and slightly rotated from the primary design. The reeded edge of the dime appeared uneven, and the planchet, the blank used for minting, had an unusual texture. The weight was marginally lighter than a standard clad dime. He was looking at something he couldn't explain. Miles contacted a regional numismatic expert who agreed to take a look. After several days of careful examination, the coin was sent to a professional grading service. The results were astonishing. The 1990 dime had been struck not on a regular copper nickel-clad blank, but on a foreign coin planchet, specifically, a Thai 25 Satong blank, which was lighter, thinner, and slightly off in diameter. No one could immediately explain how this had happened. The Thai Satong coin wasn't even remotely similar to U.S. dimes in composition or size. The Philadelphia Mint, known for its strict quality control, had no public record of working with Thai coinage blanks in 1990. The presence of such a blank, especially in an American coin press, was bewildering. But there it was, a 1990 Roosevelt dime, minted in the U.S., overstruck on a Thai coin. The implications were staggering. Miles' discovery rippled through the numismatic community. Forums exploded with theories. Some speculated that a foreign planchet had accidentally been introduced during the cleaning or sorting phases of production. Others proposed that leftover blanks from a previous experimental minting run had somehow resurfaced and entered the regular coin presses. Still others whispered about internal sabotage, an intentional error created for later resale. No theory was ever proven. But the coin was real, and it was unlike anything seen from that year. As news spread, others scoured their collections. A few more 1990 Roosevelt dimes with unusual characteristics were reported, but none struck on tie blanks. One was found on a misaligned planchet with partial reading missing. Another bore a double image, suggesting die rotation. But Miles' coin remained unique, singular in origin and form. The coin's value became a subject of heated debate. In 2005, an offer of $18,000 came through a private dealer. By 2009, another collector, an Asian American entrepreneur fascinated by cross-national coin errors, offered $36,000. Miles declined both. He wasn't ready to part with the coin, not before understanding more of its story. In 2012, an article in a leading numismatic journal documented the error in detail, drawing on internal sources and production records. It revealed that in the late 1980s, the U.S. Mint had been approached by several Southeast Asian governments for assistance with coinage production. Though no formal agreement was made public for Thai coinage, there was evidence of blank testing involving foreign planchets. These blanks, manufactured to different tolerances, were stored in shared containers for evaluation purposes. It was entirely possible, perhaps even likely, that a single Thai blank had remained in the system long enough to be struck with a 1990 Roosevelt dime die. The idea of a U.S. dime bearing the ghost of a foreign coin fascinated collectors. It wasn't just a minting error, it was a breach in the system, a moment when two distinct economies collided by accident. A moment immortalized in metal. In 2017, a second grading and metallurgical analysis confirmed the coin's composition matched that of Thai coin blanks used in the late 1980s. It bore no signs of post-mint tampering. It was a genuine error, and it was officially documented in several coin registry databases as one of the rarest Roosevelt dime anomalies of the modern era. By then, Miles had begun loaning the coin for exhibits. It appeared at conventions and museum showcases, often drawing long lines of curious viewers. People were stunned by its subtlety, how something so small, so seemingly ordinary, could contain an entire narrative hidden within its metallic surface. Eventually, the offers began to increase. In 2020, a collector based in Singapore offered $45,000. In 2022, the same collector returned with a final bid of $91,000. Another buyer, an American numismatist building a collection of global coin errors, placed a competing offer of $95,000. Both buyers were ready to wire funds immediately. Miles, now retired, considered the offers. He understood what the coin meant now. Not just to him, but to the story of minting errors worldwide. He chose to keep it, for the time being. Today, the 1990 Roosevelt dime struck on a Thai 25 Satong blank remains one of the most sought-after mint errors in circulation. Its mystery, still unsolved in full, adds to its allure. It stands as a testament to the unpredictable, to the rare confluence of accident and preservation that elevates a common coin into a six-figure legend. Its estimated value today rests between $45,000 and $95,000, depending on buyer, context, and condition. But to collectors, its true worth lies in what it represents: a breach in the fabric of routine, a story told in layers of metal, and the quiet thrill of a discovery that changes everything.